Good evening and welcome to 7 Stories Up, Lessons from Greece, Reimagining Public Spaces for a Sustainable Future in a More Equitable Society. We are delighted to have you all joining us tonight at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. My name is Aspasia Katerinis, and I'm a librarian here at SNFL and your host this evening. Before we begin, I would like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for making programs like this evening's conversation possible. I would also like to remind you that if you don't already have a library card, it is easy to get one by speaking with my colleague just outside this room after the program or visiting any information desk. Finally, I would like to encourage you to visit NYPL's website and take a look at the upcoming 7 Stories Up programs. We have an excellent lineup this season, including programs featuring new fiction, nonfiction, music, art, and more. We would love to have you join us in this space again. A word of welcome to our guests from Athens, Greece. Kalos ήρθατε στη Νέα Υόρκη. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Consul General of Greece in New York, Ms. Ifigenia Kanara, who will introduce tonight's speaker. Welcome.
That's a surprise. Kalispera. Thanks so very much for coming. As you see from your leaflet, our goal today is to present to you a jewel that we have in Athens, in Greece, and it's you've seen a short video presenting Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center, but we will now hear the story and the opportunities that the center presents from people that they do know the center, that they run the center, they are the soul of the center. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers for today's event. And this is Stathis Kalyvas. You all know Stathis Kalyvas. He's a well-known professor for government and fellow of Salt College. Ms. Elly Andriopoulou, and he's now the president, of the Stavros Niarchos Cultural Center. Elly Andriopoulou is the managing director of the center. And I'm sure that it's going to be, the discussion, the panel is going to be coordinated by Ms. Athina Valopoulou, so the moderator of tonight's event. Elly, please join us. Athina, Mr. Kalyvas. No, you're welcome. Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I know that the rain has not been on our side, but we're very glad that you're here with us. So that was a surprise for you, I guess. But you did such a good job. I'm not even needed here anymore. I'll do that. In the meantime, I am the Chief Strategy and Development Officer at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be here with the two of you. You've been already introduced. We thought we started with a video because we were actually wondering, we're not sure how many of you have had the chance to visit the SNFCC. We have a long name, so I will be referring to it as the SNFCC, but you'll know what this means. So perhaps by show of hands, just to give us a sense of how many of you had the opportunity to be there. Okay.
Wow,
that's good.
That's impressive.
So yeah, we just wanted all of you to have the opportunity to actually have a look at our premises, our programs, and just to get a better sense of what we're all about, which is what you will get to hear tonight. Before we get started, we wanted to give our thanks to the people that have helped us to put all of this together. Consul General, thank you so much. You were really instrumental in us reaching out to this community and having this opportunity. And of course, Tony Marks and all of the SNFL team who have been with us along the way and tonight as well. So I thought we get started with a question to Mrs. Andriopoulou. Oops, sorry. Because she has been there since the beginning and even before that. So perhaps you can talk to us a bit about the history of the project, how it came to be, and to tell us a bit about the governance model, because this is a quite unique model for Greek standards.
It's quite innovative. Yes, thank you. So this project started many years ago, actually in 1989, when the National Library of Greece submitted their unsolicited request to the foundation for a grant for new premises. They have a wonderful building in the center of the city, but it wasn't large enough and it didn't have the technology and equipment to make sure that they are able to take care of all, all their books and manuscripts. And after that, the library had a similar request, and the foundation was looking for some space in order to host the National Library's new building. And they found the space at the where now the SNFCC is now hosted. It's in Kalyvas, it's in the southern of the city, and it used to be the horse race track. The horse race track had been taken to the suburbs, had moved there to the suburbs right before the Athens 2004 Olympic Games. Then it became a parking lot, then a wasteland. But when the foundation found this beautiful, large space, which in a city as ancient as Athens, it's very hard to find large pieces of space like that. They decided to do what they called the triple project. So they thought it would be a great opportunity to combine the National Library with the National Opera and a public park in order to make this project fully relevant to the entire society. Even in addition to having the park, which as a public space makes it immediately accessible, they also asked the National Library to add public lending services. So again, it would be relevant to everyone, not just the academia. And they also had the idea to add a black box theater to the main opera hall in order to allow the opera to have performances that are, again, addressed to a broader audience. So this was the whole cultural center was envisioned by the foundation. They were the ones that put all these elements together. They fully funded the project, fully equipped it, created the organization that would run it in the future, and then just gifted it over to the Greek state. So in February 2017, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation handed over the cultural center, like the whole complex, the buildings, but also the share of the organization that they had created to run it, to the Greek state. So now we're fully state-owned. The board, we are supervised by the Ministry of Finance, and the board is appointed by the Minister of Finance. The foundation doesn't have a governance role, but has planned our governance very, very well by creating a contract between the foundation and the Greek state about the cultural center. So this contract of how we would operate in the future, what were the requirements, was ratified in Parliament, so it became a law. And this is the law that it sort of outlines our governance model today, which is very innovative because it's a public-private partnership. We are fully state-owned. We continue to receive tremendous support by the Stavros Niarchos Foundation through grants. But we operate in a way that allows us to operate as a private institution and have the flexibility of the private institution, and that's what allows us to more efficiently achieve our mission.
And since we're giving a bit of context and background, perhaps you could talk to us a little bit about the programming pillars of the SNFCC so far.
Sure, and that has evolved for sure over time because we've been operating for 8 years now since we were handed over to the Greek state. So our mission at the SNFCC is to activate public space in order to enrich the lives of our visitors and to foster values and practices that will lead to a more sustainable, equitable, and cohesive society. Now, if you think about how we implement that mission through our programming, there are various elements. So enriching our visitors' lives, it can happen from daily activities. So we offer over 3,000 events each year. Many of them are small activities like yoga in the park, Pilates in the park. It's about activating the public space and providing people the opportunity for health and well-being. Even just a walk in the park is, it really enriches the visitors' lives. But also there are initiatives around access to culture and music. So we have large public art projects throughout the year. Most of our visitors come just for a walk. Over 90% of our visitors come just for a walk. But then when they come, they might see an exhibition, or they might run into a concert or a workshop, and all this free access to arts and culture is something that definitely enriches their daily lives. And in terms of, fostering the values and practices, we stand for environmental sustainability. The SNFCC has LEED Platinum accreditation in construction, and now, just recently, we also achieved the same level of LEED Platinum accreditation for our operations, and we have a lot of environmental sustainability education programs addressed to all ages. Accessibility is a very important pillar, so we ensure that not only our facilities are accessible, which is something that the foundation designed, but also our programming, that is accessible for people that are neurodiverse, for people with all kinds of disabilities, that they're able to participate in whatever we're organizing. So those are just a few examples, because it's quite broad, as you can imagine, with 3,000 events per year, from little yoga classes to concerts of 15,000 people in the Great Lawn and movie screenings throughout the summer. It's quite broad, but the idea is to enrich people's lives, provide access to culture and to well-being.
Mr. Kalyvas, you were appointed towards the end of 2023, which makes you a relatively new member of our family. But I know that you've had the opportunity to visit it quite a lot before, and you have experienced the SNFCC both as a Greek citizen, but also as a world citizen, as you live and work abroad. So I was wondering, what is it that you think, with this perspective in mind, that the SNFCC stands for in the consciousness of the Greek people, and what do you think that its impact is on the image of the country abroad?
Well, thank you very much for being here. Thanks for the question. I'm a social scientist, and so I see the center as a sort of social experiment of sorts in many ways. First of all, think about the concept. It's like if you took Central Park, matched it with Lincoln Center, and then added on top of it the public library. And then you place the entire thing on the Mediterranean Sea. So it's something that's pretty unique, extremely visionary. And the question is, how does that translate into everyday practices? I think it has transformed Athens by opening a huge space on, it has connected the city to the seafront and has attracted people to areas that were deserted pretty much before that. From my perspective, what I see as very interesting is that first of all, it's a major act of philanthropy. Greece has had a very big tradition of philanthropy, especially in the 19th century, which was then disrupted. That philanthropy was primarily diasporic. One of the major universities in Athens, for example, the technical university, is called Metsovio, from Metsovo, because it was founded by 3 individuals who came from a village pretty much in the middle of nowhere, made big fortunes outside Greece, and then donated. So that was a very lively, very important tradition that was regenerated, I think, by this gift, and sets an example. The second dimension that I would single out is that its mode of governance, as Elly has pointed out, has elements of a private-public partnership. And I think that's very important because it points to a way of running institutions that on the one hand makes them very flexible, but on the other hand also preserves their public good character, which is very important. It's not an easy equilibrium to achieve, and I think the center is doing a very good job in finding the right balance between the demands for both flexibility, good governance, good management, and on the other hand, the sort of access that the public good provides. The third aspect that I would point out is the idea that it's a public space. And it's very interesting. In Greek culture, there's a very, very strong attachment to private property. People take very good care of their property. And as a result, very often, they treat public space as if it doesn't belong to them. And that creates a tension. And I think the center is an exemplar of how you can treat the public space as if it belongs to you, how you care about it in a way that makes it extremely relevant, not just as a public good, but also as an example and as an inspiration for other projects of that sort and for how to approach public space. So I think from all those three perspectives, it is not just the completion of a project, but really the beginning for bigger things and for a way of organizing public life in Greece, which creates a living example of how certain things that a lot of people thought were not possible can actually be achieved. And I think that's the biggest, from my perspective, the most important dimension of the center.
Fast forward to 2024. What is it that you have achieved? And to make my question even more specific, I know that even during the construction phase of the project, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation worked with consultants in putting together an estimated impact study. And just before the completion of the project, this study was updated. Were these expectations met?
They were surpassed. When the foundation did the first impact study, it was 5 years before the completion of the project, which means right before construction started. So everything was estimated impact. You know, what would the construction impact be? What would the operations impact be? And one of the key drivers that sort of drives other impact is number of visitors. How many visitors do we expect the cultural center to attract? And the estimates at the time were 700,000 visitors per year. Now we get over 3 million visits per year. So this has had a disproportionately positive impact on all aspects of our impact. And it also has created some challenges sometimes with our use of our facilities, but we've been able to maintain those quite well. So another study was done right before the completion of the project and the donation to the Greek state. And at that time, only the construction impact had been achieved. And it was no surprise that during that time, because it was constructed between 2012 and 2016, which was a very difficult time for Greece. It was a great crisis. So the SNFCC almost was the construction industry during that time. There was no other big projects happening. And we were looking at what would be the impact in operations. So 5 years after we started operating, we redid the study with the same methodology, and we basically measured impact across 3 axes. We looked at the social impact of the project, and we're not talking just about the sort of the structure in the center, but also by the resident organizations that are there, the Greek National Opera and the National Library of Greece, as well as the programming that the SNFCC is doing. So we measured the social impact that this had with the number of participants, the scale that we had, the 80,000 students that participate in our educational programs, and it was clear that it had made a difference in the lives of our visitors, not only those that reside close to the SNFCC, but of Attica. We also saw during our impact study that it had impact as a landmark and as a tourist destination. So many foreigners were now adding a day or half a day to their stop, through Athens before they went to the islands in order to add the SNFCC to the venues that they would visit and walk around and admire the Renzo Piano architecture and the green space that was there. On the financial impact, the SNFCC has had a significant for its size, I believe, financial impact because it has had an impact in the hospitality industry. So we saw new hotels being developed in the area, and all that was measured by the Boston Consulting Group with which we worked, that it contributes 203 million euros to GDP each year. It's not a huge amount compared to our GDP, but it does change the perception that cultural centers are cost centers because they actually do contribute to the GDP and they do contribute to tax revenues through their existence and through the redevelopment of the area. And of course, we measured our environmental impact, which has to do both with how the building was designed to be, very energy efficient, but also with just by the sheer fact that we doubled the green per capita in the entire area. So the mere existence of the park just doubled the green for everyone in the 4 neighboring municipalities. It created a microclimate which reduced the temperature by 1 degree, which is important in Athens. And there were various elements that had to do both with the design and the operations that created a very tangible environmental impact for the SNFC. So that's what we measured 5 years into its operation.
So you mentioned earlier our mission, and this is very much have to do with the Greek society, serving Greek society. So, Mr. Kalyvas, is culture a public good, and can a cultural institution be a platform for social imagination?
That's a great question for which there is no easy answer. I am a very big believer in the idea that culture is extremely important, even though it's something that is not easy to establish in terms of facts. But one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The fact that the effect of culture is very difficult to measure precisely because it's so indirect and takes so long to express itself does not mean that it doesn't matter. So how does culture matters? In many different ways, of course. You can start from the very basics about access to arts as a way to make life more fulfilling. But you can also, and again, I'm speaking like a social scientist, delve into how, especially for a small country like Greece, having a strong sense of its self-worth is essential for its existence. It's an existential, actually, aspect in a way that perhaps might not be as visible or as important in a very large country. And especially a country that has experienced a lot of challenges, figuring out what it is, where it is going, what are the main characteristics, its identity. There is evidence by historians and sociologists, anthropologists, that having a cohesive culture is, in a sense, a narrative that allows a group of people to undertake collective action, without which nothing is possible. So to act together. And in order for people to act together, they have to feel that they're part of the same community. I see the role of the center as an institution that promotes, along with other institutions, the idea of a common culture in a small country, but nevertheless, getting 10 million people to act together is never easy. And I think that is, in my view, one of the most important ways in which culture channels the way through which a society comes together. I also see another dimension, which is, as I mentioned before, connecting Greece to its diaspora, which is very large as well. It's a way for the descendants of people who migrated from Greece to rediscover part of their story. I think it's very difficult to describe the feeling of just walking under the olive trees in front of the Aegean Sea and watching a sunset. Then you can also go and watch a great opera and have a great meal, or perhaps do nothing, just hang out in the park and enjoy the sunset. I think these are the kinds of experiences that really can act in a sort of fundamental way in the way you think about yourself. And I think for the diaspora, that is a focal point that can work as a way to make the connection between groups of people who have common origins strengthen.
Thank you. So how do you, as an institution, try to respond to and to be relevant to a society in flux? And actually, how is this translated to the Greek context? What are the areas that you're focusing on?
Well, I talked a little bit, about our mission and our programming so far. It's really important to be connected with what society needs. We can't just provide the same types of programming all the time. And there are some key challenges facing Greek society. As a cultural center, we can't address all of them, that's for sure. But there are certain aspects for which we can play a very important role. Now, I'll give you some examples. We all know that Greece, and along with many Western countries, it's facing a huge demographic issue. That means there's an aging population who is still very active. They want to live very vibrant lives. And we believe that as a cultural center, we can create programming, services, and opportunities to enhance their physical health, their mental health, and their sense of community, which is so important in remaining active in society. So in addressing that, we will be launching the Longevity Hub, which will start with research and will provide programs that will enhance what we already offer, because we already offer some health and sports. We already offer like technology literacy skills, grandparents coming in and creating community on how to Skype with their grandkids and things like that. But this all needs to be sort of tied together based on the research that we see. And, I listen to, it's hard to measure the impact of culture. One of the aspects of measurement that has been built globally the last few years, and for which we will also participate, is the cultural prescription programs. So many universities are now doing research on the effect of access to culture and cultural experiences in health, in mental health, in dementia. And this is something that we will also participate in the context of this program. Another area that I believe the States is also facing, another challenge that the States are also facing, and we see it in Greece, is public discourse. How do we foster, create the new generation of citizens that can debate constructively, that can advocate for democracy, that can hear each other's views even when they disagree. So engaging youth, especially for civic engagement, is definitely one way to address this. And as a cultural center, we can do this. 2 years ago, we launched the Youth Council, which is basically a group of young people that change every year, a very diverse group of young people, and we give them the platform at the SNFCC to do programming that is addressed to people their age and to be involved in all our initiatives around the environment and around gender equality, etc. So that's another example. And I think the third one I would highlight is something that's a global challenge, and it's the climate crisis. It affects all countries, and we have already developed many programs on environmental education for all ages. The school programs have many environmental education programs, but we also have like a Green Weekend, which is a big festival once a year, where we talk to our visitors about how individuals can have a positive impact on society, not just how we can change, fossil fuels and things like that, which are more scientific and not relevant to everyday public. So all these initiatives will be further enhanced through an environmental education center that we will develop in order to increase the scale of these initiatives and also the type of those.
Now I have a question that perhaps sounds less exciting, but the cultural professionals in the room definitely know it's probably the most pressing one. What about financial sustainability? Can you tell us a bit about your funding model and your approach to financial sustainability?
Yes. Anyone working in nonprofits? Yes. Financial sustainability is definitely a challenge, and it's for all nonprofits. The scale of what we have requires a lot of funding. The quality of what we offer requires a lot of funding, and we are very fortunate to have the Stavros Niarchos Foundation that created this wonderful gift to continue to support us. But the Cultural Center is not one organization's project. It's a state-owned, but most importantly, people-owned project. So everyone in Greece benefits from the Cultural Center. Our programming and our services are addressed to everyone in society. We are very inclusive in the way we go about it. And in that sense, it is owned by everyone in Greece, which means everyone can support it in one way or another. People could volunteer. Corporations can support us with sponsorship. Individual fundraising can come in all forms and sort of amounts. It is important, I think it's more important that we get everyone involved and everyone to be a stakeholder of this project, because everyone will lose if this project doesn't continue to flourish in the future. And also financial sustainability gives us degrees of freedom and flexibility to plan for the future and not have to worry about next month. So we have the foundation with us. We also have state funding that we receive since we're a state-owned organization. We have corporate sponsors. We have our own earned income. We're a nonprofit, but we do have earned income from, food and beverage and parking and rentals and things like that. We offer services to the resident organizations. So since we're a facility manager for everyone, we offer cleaning and maintenance and security, and then we get fees for that, which we then give to the outsourcing vendor. So it's really important to diversify our sources of income. I think that's the main goal. It's not just the amount, but make sure that it's diversified. And my sort of favorite source of funds is actually individual giving. And the reason I prefer that funding, even though it's the hardest one to get, is because it's a very personal decision. People who participate, who are donors through individual giving, like the ones we saw, we just launched our Park Patrons program. So this is a program, we're creating a community of people who want to support everything we do in the park, our park programming, many of the initiatives that we just mentioned today. And the individuals who become our park patrons and can see their name on one of the olive trees in the park made a very personal decision to support us, which means that their values are aligned with our values and their mission is allowed and with our mission. So it's very important to have that type of contribution, because it comes with advice, it comes with caring, it comes with engagement and participation. So it's something that we're trying to build on at this point in order to have more and more people around us and support this project.
So we all traveled all the way across the world from Athens, Greece, to actually get to know you. As you can imagine, we've spent our first year of operations trying to pretty much get the job done, to transform a vision into everyday operations, programs, and experiences. So now, having completed almost 8 years of operations and kind of gearing up for our 10 years anniversary, it was a time for us to go beyond our geographical barriers, beyond our premises, beyond Athens, to get connected to you, to get connected with communities of Greeks across the world. Because we believe that people are the most valuable assets. It's what brings new ideas to us and helps us get even greater in what we do. So it's a time, thank you, to open it up to you and to get to hear your questions. And that's a starter for us to get to know you actually better. I think there's going to be a
microphone, yeah, because
brought to you. Yeah,
yeah,
thanks.
it's also live streamed, so it helps people who are online to listen to the question.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering, is enhancing cultural production part of your mission? And in the 8 years that you have existed, have you fostered new cultural projects? And a related question, to what extent, knowing how difficult it is all over the world, let alone Greece, for an artist to make a living, to what extent you have an impact on the most crucial people that produce culture, that is, all the workers, cultural workers?
Thank you. So the SNFCC, as I said, has 3 organizations, the library, the opera, and the SNFCSA, that when we do the outdoor programming mostly. So the Greek National Opera is definitely a producing organization. They produce art, and that's what they present. They have artists on staff. The SNFCC is a presenting organization, not a producing organization. So we collaborate with artists in various forms of art, from visual arts and photography and sculptures that we exhibit in our public space, to performing artists and musicians. But we don't produce it ourselves. So we present it on our premises. So we have a quite different model. What as SMC we're trying to do is we definitely collaborate with many artists, because we have all these thousands of events every year. So in that way, we are supporting the artist community. One thing that we're very mindful about is the type of artists that we bring on board, and it has to do with diversity and inclusion. So we track, gender diversity of our artists, making sure that we present artists, male, female artists. We track origin, so we try to ensure that the artwork we present and the performances are as diverse as our public wants to be.
And if I may add, there is also another dimension, which is the presence of the library, which is the main depository library in Greece. It basically includes everything that has been printed and produced in Greece. And it's used by lots of people to produce new knowledge. So that's a very fundamental way through which the center promotes culture, through the production of knowledge.
Other questions? Yes, please.
With the completion of the 10 years anniversary, is there a foresight about the future role of the SNFF and also the relationship to the Athens Riviera, the Olympic buildings, and how that could be in dialogue with Hellinikon and the broader landscape of Athens?
Yes, to all that. So as we're reaching our 10 years, obviously we're looking back on the impact that we've had and what works, what doesn't work. We're addressing all these societal issues that we mentioned, but we're not isolated. We're not in a bubble, and we work very much through collaborations. Actually, especially for the Athenian Riviera, which is now being developed, it's been very interesting because we're always included in all the conversations. They invite us to speak at conferences about the role, and we're the only cultural institution. So I believe we're going to be an anchor there, a cultural anchor, because everything else on the Athenian Riviera is around hospitality or retail or commercial. And we, for now at least, are the only cultural center. We are also in talks with the Faliro Front, right in front of the SNFCC, which is state-owned. And they are looking to redevelop the space, and we are part of these conversations in order to see how this could be sort of a win-win collaboration in that respect. Did I answer everything that you asked? Yeah, and I think, I'm sure you have a...
Perhaps I should add to that. It's very interesting because Athens developed in a way that was not necessarily well connected to the seafront, even though it's a city on the seafront. And a very big part of the seafront, for those of you who don't know, used to be the old airport, which is now being redeveloped. It's becoming a city with a new park and lots of facilities. But at the same time, what is very interesting and perhaps less well known is that there is also the other direction of the seafront, which is also extremely interesting, going and stretching to Piraeus and beyond, which also includes a lot of very interesting initiatives. And that makes it very exciting because essentially the center sits at the center of all, that incredible opportunity that exists to open the city to the sea and redefine it in ways that can be very interesting. Also, Athens has a very vibrant downtown. Right now, it's a victim of its success because it's so pleasant in many ways, even though Greeks don't like it that much. But it has attracted a tremendous amount of tourism, which is changing the way it works. And I think there is a lot of room to actually rethink the ways of the city, the connection of urban centers to new areas. And I think the center is ideally located to be part of that further thinking. So there is an urbanist dimension to that, which I would like to very much emphasize.
I don't see any other hands. Oh, yes, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, congratulations. What an amazing monument to society and to the culture. So kudos. I was wondering, as you were reimagining public spaces, is there a role you see for the library and the whole cultural center in the emergency response when there are disasters? You mentioned climate change, especially natural disasters, right? Whether there is a response to the fires and people are displaced, not only provision of information and resources, but even in some cases we've seen libraries and public spaces like this having to shelter people. And the heat waves. Anyway, all of this significant climate that we're experiencing, is there, as you're looking forward, a way that you see the center playing a role in part of that response?
So far, the need hasn't arisen yet, and the reason is because most of the wildfires don't displace people around Attica, so it's quite far away for us to be able to host people. We have had, when fires have been coming close, we've had the conversation internally, are we ready to help and how can we help? But it ended up not being necessary. For the heat wave, which is more of a constant issue, and that, for example, this summer, we had continuous heat waves. So we tried to make our facilities even friendlier for visitors to come. We provided warnings for times to visit or for spaces to visit. We opened all our indoor spaces that are air conditioned for people to come and spend their day there. We changed our programming in order to make sure it's shaded, etc. So for heat waves, I think it has become almost like a business as usual, unfortunately, that we've had to adapt to this, both from an operational point of view, but also communications and awareness building. For fires and other, emergencies, we haven't been called upon, but of course, we would support whatever was needed. What we've had the opportunity to do is offer the platform of our millions of visitors to provide aid. So when there was the huge earthquake in Turkey, or when the war in Ukraine started, etc., we have 3 million visitors coming through our doors each year. We created awareness about the issues. We asked them to bring things or to donate. So we're using the SNFCC as a platform to help with emergencies, even though they're not happening right next to us. So that we've done in the past.
And I would say there's a small yet important practical dimension to that, which is I would say starting probably in May and certainly June, it becomes quite hot in Athens. Students have to do work. The library is a very welcoming space. It's air conditioned, and the energy produced is quite green. And so that is a small contribution to a much larger problem that we cannot possibly hope to solve ourselves. But certainly, besides awareness, there is also that aspect of making everyday life when the heat becomes unbearable for people to actually come in. And also
and for pets.
Yeah. When it's not extremely hot, the early mornings and the late evenings are very pleasant. One of the ways in which the park has had impact is by really the areas in which it bleeds into the surrounding neighborhoods, which are primarily working class neighborhoods, are extremely pleasant. They're full of small restaurants, lots of people walking in the street, the best lemon trees in Athens. You can actually walk and collect your lemons for free.
And olives.
And the center produces its own olive oil because of the many olive trees. So it's a very pleasant space, and the best way to experience it is to actually visit it and spend time there.
You talked about public space in the sense of the emergency, but it's also, how you activate it and how you leverage it on a daily basis, of course. And working all towards the 10-year anniversary, one of the initiatives that we're launching, I'm sure all locals here are familiar with the High Line. So the High Line, in addition to doing what it did in New York, has created a network of parks throughout the U.S. through which they share the best practices and how to redevelop space and how to better utilize it. And because we don't have many public spaces in Greece, sort of creating the discussion about what it means to have a public space and how to activate it is something that doesn't come natural. It took us a while to get people to embrace the space and the practices there. So one of the initiatives that we're working on is to use, again, the best practices and knowledge of the SNFCC to allow other municipalities around Greece beyond our borders to learn from that and to have a dialogue and see how we can build a network of other organizations who want to activate public space in their own backyard.
Hi, thank you. So as an opera singer, I'm so grateful that, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation exists in Greece. Truly grateful for that. So I guess my question is, I know that in general, opera is targeted to kind of like the older demographic. Has there been any outreach or promotion to try to reach out to the younger population? And have you seen any uptick in younger population coming to the opera, basically?
Yes, although the opera is a separate organization from us, and I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I am aware of all the initiatives that they're taking, and they have really increased their younger audience, and they have done that both through communication and outreach and creating the communities, but also through pricing access. Basically, they've done programs like 1+1 ticket. So if you bring a teenager with you, the second person doesn't pay. They just started a new initiative, which is called Opera for Everyone, and they're inviting different types of groups. So I know they've done a lot of outreach. I can't speak to the details, but we definitely see it also, like when we visit the opera, the productions, that the audience is quite younger and more diverse than one would expect. And as I said, they also have the alternative stage, which is more of a black box theater. They do musical theater there and kids opera. So there's another type of programming which is addressed to maybe a broader audience, and that will bring people in. It's been interesting because as SNFCC, they give us sometimes their space for during their dark nights, and we do our own thing. And it's never opera because we're if we have the national opera in the house, why would we do opera? And then you have little kids coming in to see symphonic Disney sort of performance or something like that, and they get used to the space, and it's not daunting anymore. They see the red velvet, but it's something that they get used to, and it doesn't seem that it's not for them or for some the type of audience. So even our own programming, which is completely unrelated to the opera, helps people get over this sort of psychological barrier of entering the red velvet opera house.
Exactly, it's a sort of demystification. Having students, for example, who use the National Library or people who come to use the park see the opera demystifies it and I think makes it more accessible.
And perhaps a last question? Yes.
What about future cooperations with NYPL, with your center in Athens and the NYPL here?
Yep. So the National Library of Greece, which again is a separate organization, resident organization, but of course, both the opera and the library are collaborators there. We share the space. We do many things together as organizations. They sit on our board, so it's a very close collaboration. So the National Library of Greece just appointed a new director, and we have already been in touch with the New York Public Library so that they can, share best practices. She is very energetic and very willing to further open the library spaces, even spaces that haven't been fully activated in the past, and open them to the general public. She has already taken over programming that in the past we were doing because the library was still going through their transition in the new space and they weren't ready to do it. So I see a great opportunity there for collaboration with the New York Public Library, and she's very willing to do that. And I know the New York Public Library is too.
So it's time for us to wrap it up. We will be right outside for a while, so please do come say hello, ask further questions. We want to stay in touch. You can sign up for our newsletter so that you get to hear more about us. And I can promise that we will be back, and this is only the beginning, hopefully, of our relationship. Thanks so much for being here.
And don't take our word for what we presented. The best thing for you to do is just to visit.
Come visit snfcc.org. You can get all the information. We hope to see you in our park.
Thank you.